I was standing at my kitchen window, watching the first snowflakes of January drift down onto Lake Superior, when I heard the crunch of tires on the frozen driveway. It was barely 5:30 in the morning. The sun wouldn't be up for another hour, and I hadn't been expecting anyone. Certainly not my daughter Emma. But there she was, climbing out of a silver SUV with Minnesota plates I didn't recognize, and there was a man with her, tall, well-dressed, carrying himself with the kind of confidence that made you either trust him immediately or question everything about him. I'm 62 years old. I've spent 30 years in hospital administration. I've learned to question. Mom, Emma's voice carried across the snow as she rushed toward the door. Surprise! I opened the door before she could knock, and she threw her arms around me. She smelled like expensive perfume and coffee from a gas station. Behind her, the man was already unloading suitcases from the back of the SUV. Emma, sweetheart, what are you doing here? You didn't call. I know. I'm sorry. She pulled back, her cheeks flushed from the cold. Mom, this is Brandon. My husband. The word hit me like a slap. You're what? We got married 3 weeks ago. I wanted it to be a surprise. She was practically bouncing with excitement. Brandon got transferred to Minneapolis for this huge project with his company. We're going to be living here. Well, not here, but in the area. We need to find a place, and I thought, why not stay with Mom for a couple of weeks while we look? Brandon had reached the porch, carrying what looked like enough luggage for a month. He extended his hand, and his grip was firm. Too firm. Mrs. Chen, Emma's told me so much about you. This place is incredible. Right on the lake? 3 years now, I said, not quite ready to smile yet. Since my husband passed, I'm so sorry for your loss. His expression shifted to something appropriately somber, but there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite read. Emma said, You're all alone out here. That must be difficult. I manage just fine. Of course you do, he said quickly. I didn't mean to suggest otherwise. It's just, this is a lot of house for one person. Must be expensive to maintain. We'd been standing on my porch for less than 2 minutes, and he was already commenting on my finances and living situation. I looked at Emma, who was still beaming at me like she'd just won the lottery. Come in before you freeze, I said, stepping aside. The house had been John's dream. We'd bought it with his life insurance money from his first career before he went into teaching. 1,200 square feet of tongue and groove pine, huge windows overlooking the lake, a stone fireplace that could heat the whole place. It wasn't a mansion, but it was paid off, and it was mine. Brandon walked through like he was conducting an inspection. Great bones, he said, running his hand along the wall. You could really maximize the value here, with some updates. Open up this wall, put in a modern kitchen. This furniture, though, he gestured at my grandmother's antique sideboard. You'd want to clear all this out. Too dark. Makes the space feel smaller. I like my furniture, I said evenly. Emma laughed nervously. Brandon's really into design. He's always thinking about optimization. What exactly do you do, Brandon? I'm a cryptocurrency investment consultant. I help people and companies maximize their digital asset portfolios. He said it like he'd practiced in front of a mirror. It's the future of finance, Mrs. Chen. Traditional banking is dying. Smart people are getting in on the ground floor. I see. Brandon's company is opening a new regional office in Minneapolis, Emma added. He's going to be managing the whole Midwest division. Sounds impressive, I said, though something about his expensive watch and too perfect smile wasn't sitting right with me. You two must be exhausted. Let me show you to the guest room. As I led them down the hall, Brandon said, Actually, Mrs. Chen, I'm an early riser. Very early. I have calls with clients in Asia, so I need to be up and functional by 5 a.m. I hope that won't be a problem. You're in your room by 5 a.m., I said. How would that be a problem? He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. No, I mean I'll need to be up, showered, dressed, and fed by 5. Coffee ready? Breakfast on the table? That's my routine. I do my best work in the morning, but I need the right fuel. You know, Emma usually handles it, but since we're guests in your home, Since you're guests in my home, you're welcome to use the kitchen whenever you like. Emma touched my arm. Mom, Brandon just means he works better with a solid routine. You know how some people are. If it's not too much trouble. Emma, you're 32 years old. If your husband needs breakfast at 5 a.m., I'm sure you can handle it. I saw something flicker across Brandon's face. Annoyance, maybe, or calculation. Emma's smile had frozen in place. Of course, she said quietly. I just thought, since you're always up early anyway. I'm up early to watch the sunrise and drink my coffee in peace, I said. Not to run a bed and breakfast. Brandon's laugh this time was warmer, more genuine, but somehow that made it worse. You're right, absolutely right. Emma, we can't impose like that. Your mom's generosity in letting us stay is already more than enough. He turned to me. I apologize if I came across as presumptuous. It's just, in my business, the morning routine is everything. But you're absolutely right. We'll figure it out ourselves. He was smooth. I'd give him that. That night, after they'd gone to bed, I stood at my kitchen counter and tried to figure out why I felt like I'd just let a fox into the henhouse. Emma seemed happy. She was glowing, the way brides are supposed to glow. And Brandon was polite enough, even if he was a little too interested in my house and my routines. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was just a lonely widow who'd gotten too used to her own space and her own way of doing things. John had always said I was too suspicious, too quick to see problems where there weren't any. But John had also taught me to trust my instincts. I was up at 4:30 the next morning, like always. I made my coffee and settled into my chair by the window to watch the sky lighten over the frozen lake. The ice was starting to form in the shallows, creating intricate patterns that caught the first light. At 4:55, I heard footsteps. Brandon appeared in the kitchen, already dressed in a crisp button-down and slacks, his hair still damp from the shower. "Good morning, Mrs. Chen," he said, moving toward the coffee pot like he owned it. He stopped when he saw it was empty. "Oh, I thought I just made enough for me," I said. "The filters are in the cupboard above the pot." He stared at me for a moment, then smiled. "Of course. No problem at all." I watched him make coffee, noting how he opened every cupboard, looked in every drawer, taking mental inventory of my kitchen. When he finally sat down at the table with his mug, he pulled out his laptop. "I hope you don't mind if I work here," he said. "I need to be able to spread out a bit. It's my kitchen." "Right, of course. I just meant the Wi-Fi reaches here, doesn't it?" "It reaches everywhere in the house." "Great." He opened his computer, and I caught a glimpse of the screen. Multiple browser windows, what looked like trading platforms, numbers scrolling past. He noticed me looking and angled the screen slightly away. Crypto markets never sleep, gotta stay on top of it. I sipped my coffee and said nothing. At 5:15, Emma appeared, looking exhausted. Without a word, she moved to the stove and started making eggs and toast. Brandon didn't look up from his computer. Didn't thank her. Just accepted the plate she set in front of him like it was his due. "You want some, Mom?" Emma asked. "I'll make my own later, honey." "You should go back to bed." "Can't." Brandon likes me to review the market news with him before his calls start. I watched my daughter sit down next to her husband, watched her scroll through financial websites on her phone while he ate the breakfast she'd made him, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This went on for 3 days. Brandon at my kitchen table by 5 a.m., Emma cooking his breakfast, both of them treating my home like it was their office. Brandon made calls in my living room, rearranged my furniture to optimize the space, and started leaving his papers on every available surface. On the third night, after Emma had gone to bed early, she looked exhausted. Brandon stayed up. I found him going through the cabinet where I kept my important papers. "Can I help you find something?" I asked from the doorway. He didn't even have the grace to look startled. "Actually, yes. Emma mentioned you're retired from hospital administration. You must have a pretty solid pension, life insurance from your late husband, maybe some investments. I wanted to talk to you about an opportunity." "An opportunity." He closed my cabinet, and turned to face me with that smile. "Mrs. Chen, can I be frank with you? I'd appreciate it. You're sitting on a gold mine here, and you don't even realize it." This property alone, with the lake access, you could easily get $800,000 for it in the current market. Maybe more. Your pension, your husband's life insurance, any savings you have. If you're just letting that sit in a traditional bank account, you're losing money every day to inflation. I'm doing fine. I'm sure you are. But fine isn't the same as thriving. I work with a lot of clients your age, and the biggest mistake they make is being too conservative with their assets. There's an investment opportunity right now, a cryptocurrency fund I manage that's guaranteed 20% annual returns. I've been telling Emma we should get you in on it. Think about it. 20% on, say $500,000. That's $100,000 a year in passive income. And how much would I need to invest to access this opportunity? Minimum buy-in is $50,000, but honestly, with your assets, I'd recommend starting with at least $200,000. Really maximize your returns. I looked at him standing in my living room in his expensive clothes with his expensive watch, and I thought about Emma's tired face and the way she jumped whenever he spoke. Let me think about it, I said. His smile got wider. Take your time. No pressure. But the fund is closing to new investors at the end of the month, so you'd want to decide soon. Of course it was. The next morning, I called my friend Lisa. We'd worked together at the hospital for 20 years before she retired and moved into financial consulting. If anyone could tell me if Brandon's opportunity was legitimate, it was her. Margaret, honey. No, she said as soon as I described it. 20% guaranteed returns? That's not investment, that's a scam. Either a Ponzi scheme or flat-out theft. No legitimate investment guarantees 20%. Hell, if you get 8% in this market, you're doing phenomenally well. That's what I thought. Who is this guy again? Your daughter's husband? Married him 3 weeks ago. I'd never heard his name before they showed up at my door. There was a long pause. Margaret, I don't want to alarm you, but this sounds like one of those romance scams. They target middle-aged or older women through their adult children, get access to the family, work their way into the finances. He's not targeting me romantically. No, but he's targeting your daughter as a way to get to you and your assets. How long did they date before getting married? I realized I didn't know. Emma? I found her in the guest room, making the bed. Honey, how long did you and Brandon date before you got married? She flushed. 6 months. I know it was fast, but Mom, when you know, you know. He's amazing. He's already helped me reorganize my whole financial life. I had, like, 5 different credit cards with balances, and he consolidated everything and... He consolidated your credit cards? Well, yeah. He had me transfer the balances to his business account, and then he paid them off. Now I just make one payment to him every month, instead of 5 different ones. It's so much easier. Emma, please tell me you didn't give him access to your bank accounts. He's my husband, Mom. Of course we have joint accounts. That's what married people do. I sat down on the bed. Sweetheart, before you got married, did you do any kind of background check on him? Did you meet his family? His friends? Her face closed down. Why are you asking me this? Because Lisa says his investment opportunity sounds like a scam, and I'm worried. Lisa doesn't know Brandon. You don't know Brandon. You've made that very clear since we got here. She stood up, clutching the sheets. I thought you'd be happy for me. I thought you'd be excited that I found someone. But instead, you've been cold and suspicious and, Emma, he was right. He said you'd be like this. He said older people get paranoid about money, that they can't understand modern investment strategies. What else did he say about me? She didn't answer, just brushed past me out of the room. I sat there for a long time, thinking about the way Brandon had gone through my papers, the way he'd commented on my house the moment he arrived, the way he'd moved Emma into my home, like he was moving into position. That afternoon, while they were out looking at apartments, I did what I should have done the day they arrived. I searched for Brandon Chase online. Nothing. No LinkedIn profile, no Facebook, no Instagram. For a man who claimed to manage a cryptocurrency investment fund, he had remarkably little digital presence. I tried adding cryptocurrency to the search. Still nothing. Then I tried Brandon Chase scam. 3 articles, 2 from Minnesota news sites, one from Wisconsin, all from the last 3 years. All about a Brandon Chase who'd been investigated for running a Ponzi scheme targeting elderly investors. The investigations had stalled due to lack of evidence, victims too embarrassed to testify, money too carefully hidden. But in one article, there was a photo, and while the man in the photo had darker hair and wore glasses, I'd bet my house it was the same person. I called Lisa back. I need your help. Tell me what you need. Can you create a fake bank statement showing I have $500,000 in liquid assets? Margaret. He's a con artist, Lisa. I found articles, and my daughter is married to him. I need to draw him out. Get him to show his hand in a way I can prove. This is dangerous. I spent 30 years dealing with hospital administrators and insurance companies. I can handle one con artist. There was a pause. I'll have it to you by tonight. I made one more call. To Tim Rodriguez. We'd worked together years ago. He'd been head of hospital security before retiring to become a private investigator. Now he did background checks and surveillance work. Tim, I need you to run a deep background check on someone, and I need you to do it fast. By the time Emma and Brandon came home that evening, I'd done my research. Tim had texted me preliminary findings. Brandon Chase was likely an alias. He'd found 3 other names associated with the same fingerprints, the same face. Multiple states, multiple scams. Always the same pattern: romance, scam targeting women with access to family money. At dinner, I played my part. Brandon, I've been thinking about that investment opportunity you mentioned. He looked up, fork halfway to his mouth. Yes? I'd like to hear more about it. I talked to my financial advisor. I saw Emma's face fall. She had some questions, but I told her this was my decision. I'm interested. The transformation in him was remarkable. Suddenly, he was charm itself, attentive, warm, explaining his fund in terms that sounded sophisticated but meant nothing. Emma was glowing, proud that her husband and her mother were finally connecting. I'd need to see some documentation, I said. My portfolio, for instance. I'd want you to assess everything before I make a decision. Absolutely. That's exactly the right approach. Why don't you gather all your financial statements and we can go through them tomorrow morning? Perfect. I'll have everything ready. That night, I lay awake planning. By morning, I had my strategy. I was up at 4 a.m. I made a full breakfast: scrambled eggs with cheese, bacon, fresh toast, orange juice. And in Brandon's coffee, I stirred in a generous dose of senna extract I'd bought years ago for a medical issue. Not enough to be dangerous, but enough to make his morning very, very uncomfortable. When he came into the kitchen at 5, he actually looked surprised. Mrs. Chen, you didn't have to do this. I wanted to, I said warmly. We got off on the wrong foot. You're family now, and I'm excited about this investment opportunity. He sat down, and Emma, who'd followed him out, looked between us with hopeful eyes. I set the coffee in front of him. He took a long drink. So, he said, opening his laptop, let's talk about your financial situation. I laid out the documents, the real ones first, my modest pension statements, my small savings account. I watched his face fall slightly. Then I pulled out the fake statement Lisa had created, showing a money market account with $530,000. His eyes lit up. Now this, he said, tapping the paper. This is what we need to work with. This is just sitting in a money market account earning what, 1%? About that. Criminal. Absolute theft. We could have this earning 20% within 6 months. He was leaning forward now, his coffee forgotten. With an initial investment of, say, $200,000, you'd see returns of. That's when the senna started working. His face changed. He grabbed his stomach. Excuse me, he said, standing up quickly. I need to. He headed for the bathroom. Emma looked concerned. Is he okay? Probably just something he ate, I said. He was gone for 20 minutes. When he came back, he looked pale but determined. Sorry about that. Where were we? You were explaining how you'd invest my money. He reached for his coffee, took another drink. 5 minutes later, he was gone again. This continued for the next hour. Every time he sat down and started talking about transferring funds, accessing my accounts, setting up new accounts in both our names for tax purposes, his stomach would cramp and he'd have to run. Finally, around 7 there was a knock at the door. I'd been expecting it. I opened the door to find Tim Rodriguez standing there with 2 people in police windbreakers. "Mrs. Chen," Tim said formally. "These are Detectives Morrison and Lee. They'd like to speak with Brandon Chase." Emma's face went white. "What's going on?" Brandon emerged from the hallway, looking green. "What is this?" Detective Morrison stepped forward. "Mr. Chase. Or should I say, Daniel Brooks? Or maybe you prefer Michael Thompson?" Brandon's face went blank. The charming mask dropped, and what was underneath was cold and calculating. "I don't know what you're talking about. We have warrants in 3 states for fraud, identity theft, and theft by deception. We'd like you to come with us." "I haven't done anything wrong. I'm a legitimate businessman who's used at least 7 different names in the last 5 years, Detective Lee said. "Who's married at least 4 women we know of and cleaned out their families' bank accounts. Who's currently wanted in Wisconsin, Iowa, and Michigan." Emma grabbed my arm. "Mom, what's happening?" I looked at Brandon. "I found the articles about you. I had you investigated, and this morning I recorded every word you said about accessing my accounts, transferring my money, setting up accounts in your name." His eyes went to the small camera I'd set up on the bookshelf, hidden behind a plant. "You set me up," he said. "I protected myself. There's a difference, Emma." He turned to her, and his voice was different now, harder, colder. "Emma, baby, this is all a misunderstanding. These people are trying to frame me because I'm successful. Your mom is just jealous that you found someone? Save it," Emma said, and her voice was shaking. "I heard what you said. About the accounts. About the tax purposes." She looked at me. "Oh my God. The credit cards. He didn't pay them off, did he? Probably consolidated them into his own account, and now you're making payments to him instead of to the card companies. And the $5,000 I gave him last month for the investment opportunity, gone," Detective Morrison said quietly. "I'm sorry. We see this a lot." Brandon made a move toward the door, but Detective Lee was faster. "Don't make this worse," he said, pulling out handcuffs. As they let him out, Brandon turned back. His face was twisted with rage. "You stupid old woman. You have no idea what you just cost yourself. That investment was real. You could have made a fortune. If it was real, you wouldn't have needed 7 different names," I said. After they left, Emma stood in my kitchen crying. "I'm so stupid. I'm so incredibly stupid." I put my arms around her. "You're not stupid. He's a professional. This is what he does. I gave him everything. My credit cards, my savings, my trust fund from Dad." She pulled back, her face streaked with tears. "How did you know?" "I didn't, at first. But he made mistakes. He pushed too hard, too fast, and he forgot that some of us old women have been around long enough to recognize a predator." "What's going to happen now?" "Now," I said, "you're going to stay here as long as you need. We're going to contact a lawyer and see what we can recover of your money. We're going to get that marriage annulled, and you're going to heal. I don't know how to come back from this. One day at a time," I said. "That's how everyone does it." Over the next few weeks, the story came out. Brandon, his real name was Christopher Mills, had been running this scam for 7 years. He targeted women in their 30s, women who had wealthy or financially stable parents. He'd marry them quickly, gain access to their finances and their families, then clean out accounts and disappear before anyone realized what was happening. Emma had been number 8, but she was the first one whose mother had figured it out in time. The police recovered about $30,000 of Emma's money. The rest was gone, probably in offshore accounts we'd never trace. But the detective said there were 23 other victims across 6 states who were willing to testify. Christopher Mills wasn't going to see the outside of a prison for a very long time. Emma moved back into my house, not temporarily, like she and Brandon had planned, but as a choice. She got a job at a nonprofit in Duluth, started therapy, and slowly began to put her life back together. 6 months after Brandon's arrest, I started a blog. I called it The Snowbird Diaries, and I wrote about financial scams targeting seniors and their families. I wrote about romance scams, investment fraud, identity theft. I shared my story, and Emma's, and people started reaching out. My mother-in-law just gave her new boyfriend power of attorney. My dad's girlfriend wants him to refinance his house. My sister just married someone she met online, and now he wants access to our inheritance. I couldn't save everyone, but I could share what I'd learned. I could help people recognize the warning signs, and maybe, just maybe, I could stop a few more Christopher Millses before they destroyed a few more families. Emma read the blog every week. One night, sitting by the fire with snow falling outside, she said, "You know what's funny? Brandon was right about one thing." "What's that?" "This house is too big for one person." She smiled at me. "Good thing there are two of us now." I looked at my daughter, stronger now than she'd been 6 months ago, and I thought about John, about how he'd always said that the best revenge wasn't getting even, it was building something better. We'd built something better. A home, a partnership, a mission to help others. And somewhere in a county jail, Christopher Mills was discovering that the breakfast they served at 5 a.m. wasn't quite what he was used to. I raised my coffee mug to Emma. To new beginnings. She clinked her mug against mine. And to mothers who pay attention. Outside, the snow continued to fall on Lake Superior, covering everything in white. Inside, we were warm. Inside, we were safe. And inside, we were ready for whatever came next. Because that's what women do. We protect, we persevere, and when necessary, we fight back.